What's going on, YouTube? Welcome to today's video. Before we go ahead and get started, I just want to say thank you for all of the growth and for all of the positivity on my channel. A couple things that I really value are learning and growing from past mistakes, using that in whatever area it occurred in to just better yourself. So going forward, I'm going to try and be more transparent with you guys right off the bat with my YouTube titles. I know that in the past, some of my videos have received some like, why did you title it like that? Or like, that was completely unfair of you to title it like that. And so in my head, I'm able to justify it because like, especially with my last video, someone said, hey, you shouldn't have titled your video that. Well, I mean, I think it's fair, but just know that going forward, I'm gonna try and not do that. But I also want to say thank you guys for all the growth and for the love and positivity you've been showing my channel. Although it has been kind of inconsistent as far as views go, I tend to upload a video that gets like 40 views and then the next time it gets 500 views. But historically, well, not historically, previously, my Sony videos, when I talk about Sony, those videos tend to get the most attraction and the biggest numbers. So for once, I've actually switched fully over to Sony. I've never switched to Sony before. I've used a couple of the cameras in the past, but now we're there. So we're shooting on the A7 III, and then I also do have the A6400 behind me. You guys can't see it, but... And so kind of keep the growth going, making sure that those Sony videos are getting high views. We're going to talk about the Sony A5 today, or the A6 today. We're not exactly sure what it's going to be called, but we do have a lot of information on what to expect from this camera, when it's coming out, what it's going to look like, and some of the capabilities it's going to have. So I want to start off by talking about Canon real quick. They have done a fantastic job of, right off the bat, starting their mirrorless lineup and emerging into the mirrorless scene with some entry-level options for beginners and enthusiasts, and even some like kind of professionals. I'm talking about the EOS R, which came out in 2018, not a pro level camera, and the EOS RP, which is definitely just a cheaper, lower end, full frame camera for people who really want to get that full frame look, who are on a budget. Now, Sony has done a great job with their mirrorless cameras that are APS-C sensors, like this one here, the A6400. Great cameras. And the A6600, their flagship APS-C camera, has some pretty cool features too. It's definitely got some features that you cannot find on any of Canon's APS-C mirrorless cameras from their M series lineup. Who knows what the M50 Mark II is going to bring? We do have some rumors on that. But Sony has established themselves in the mirrorless market as oriented towards kind of the bare bones beginners and those who are on a budget with APS-C mirrorless cameras, but also the super high-end pros who really want to get into video, kind of how the A7S III is oriented towards, and some really serious professional photographers with the A7R4 and the A9 Mark II. They can pretty much do anything a photographer would need, in my opinion. I'm not a pro photographer, so I mean, I don't own either of the bodies. I have used the A7R III, pretty great stills camera, phenomenal. But basically, that's to say that Sony has all of their bases covered, except for the entry-level full-frame consumers. Those who want to get the full-frame look, shallower depth of field, a wider potential field of view that you can accomplish with lenses, potentially better low light, maybe even better dynamic range, but those who aren't looking to spend $2,000 on a camera body. Now, don't get me wrong, the Sony A7 III is their cheapest full-frame mirrorless camera on the market currently. As far as the MSRP price goes, I'm not talking about like used models, like a used Sony A7S, and some people just cannot afford that. So what Sony's doing is they're gonna be announcing the A5 or the A6. We're not entirely sure, like I said. And let's talk about the physical features and the body first off. It's gonna look like this. It's gonna look like the Sony A6400, kind of the APS-C mirrorless lineup as far as just the overall footprint goes. It's not gonna be like Sony's A7 III and those bodies that look pretty much identical to the A7 III. So just picture this, but with a much bigger sensor in there. If you go to the backside, this obviously is not the A5, just for anyone who is wondering. But if you go to the backside, it's going to have a flip out screen, potentially similar to the one featured on the Sony A7S III and the ZV-1. I think it's the ZV-1, but it's the new ZV camera. One way that the A5's body design is going to kind of veer off path in terms of the APS-C cameras is it's going to have a viewfinder that is retractable or pops up, and that is to just get it out of the way for when you don't need it and to keep it overall just smaller and tighter. And the grip is not going to be compromised, allegedly, in this camera, alongside with battery. So basically the grip is going to be bigger in order to house a bigger battery. It is confirmed the battery that this camera is going to be using will be the NP FZ100. So again, phenomenal battery life. It feeds the A7 III for days. I literally went to Gooseberry Falls all day, and I shot with it video and photo all day. And by the end of the day, I was at 66%. And so that's good to hear that Sony is not going to compromise battery life for size and keeping it compact. And then lastly, about the body, it's going to be constructed from a mixture of plastic and metals. This is going to keep it lightweight and comfortable to hold in the hand. Fortunately, with the flip out screen, it is going to be fully touch capable, so expect to see the same menu system from the Sony A7S III. This isn't really part of the physical body anymore, so we're kind of diving into the sensor of the A5. It's going to potentially feature a new kind of IBIS. Now, Sony has been pretty infamous for not having great IBIS. A lot of times you just really can't tell if it's on or off when you're especially when you're shooting video. This makes Sony IBIS not really do anything if you're shooting video while walking and while moving forward, walking backwards, side to side. And although the Sony IBIS doesn't typically struggle with corner wobble, you can't tell it's on. And that might be because the lens mount that Sony features, their E-mount, is just small in nature, and that doesn't give the sensor much room to float around and correct for wobbles and shakes and micro jitters, because a full frame sensor, 35mm, is pretty big, especially within this little mount, because this is the same mount, the same size that full frame cameras from Sony are. And so regarding the image stabilization that the sensor will have, it has been rumored to have a matrix stabilization. Whatever that means, we're gonna have to wait and see more on this and to see how it compares with Sony's regular just 5.5 axis, whatever it is, image stabilization. One thing that really makes this stand out as an enthusiast or beginner entry-level camera is the SD card slot. It's gonna be one card slot. Although UHS 2, which is pretty good to hear, it will probably be loaded in from the bottom where you put the battery. And so a lot of shooters do not like that. And also the fact that it doesn't have two card slots kind of makes it a non-pro camera in some people's eyes. Some super basic things just to get out of the way for it. It's gonna have Wi-Fi, it's gonna have Bluetooth, a mic input, and a headphone jack, some pretty standard stuff that I would be concerned if they didn't include that in there. Like the Sony A7S III and even the Sony A7 III, it's going to have a USB-C input, so you can have a power delivery system, just feed in that baby power so it can chug through a long shoot. Since they did say that the old European tax laws on whether a camera manufacturer designs a camera that has unlimited time recording in video or doesn't, that there's extra tax on those that do have unlimited time recording, that has expired. And so Sony claimed that going forward in the future, mirrorless cameras, you won't be seeing that time limit recording anymore. So that means we should be seeing on the A5 unlimited recording, and with the only two limiting factors being heat and battery life. All right, before we talk about video features, let's just get photo features out of the way quick, the ones that we do know. As far as burst shooting goes, so those of you who are wildlife photographers or sports shooters, it's gonna have a burst rate, burst mode of up to 5 frames per second. And so that's not too great, but it's kind of comparable to the EOS R and RP. So if you could make it work with those cameras, you could probably make it work with this one. It's also rumored to have a 24 megapixel sensor, similar to the A7 III, similar to pretty much every other kind of lower end Sony mirrorless camera. And this is very interesting. I've seen a little conflicting information regarding the video side of this. So a few websites claim that this camera, you should be expecting 10-bit 4.2, no, actually it doesn't say, just 10-bit recording. It might be 4.20. And that's in 4K 24 at 100 megabits per second and 4K 30 at 100 megabits per second. But I did see one website say that it will have just 4K 30 8-bit. So I guess we'll have to wait and see on that. I would be pretty surprised if it did have 10-bit internal. That would be kind of cool, especially for the price point that this camera is going to be positioned at. And there's even talk that it'll be able to shoot at 4K 60 internal. Who knows whether if that's 8-bit or 10-bit, but if that is an actual feature that the camera has, expect it to be cropped so that you won't be getting the full width of the sensor. And you can also expect that it would be in S&Q mode, meaning that you don't have audio with it and it's slowed down in camera. So usable, yes, but not fantastic. And so last on this camera is it's going to be rumored to be priced around $1,000. So pretty much just competing head to head, neck and neck with Canon's EOS RP. And you know, if most of these features are true, and if they come to be a reality in what this camera has, I would say that the A5 is probably better than the RP in a handful of ways. I mean, of course, I'm expecting this to have S-Log2, S-Log3, HLG3, these fantastic picture profile modes where you can reap out just the most dynamic range out of the sensor as possible. And that's just miles beyond what the RP has. You can get CineStyle on there, which will give you like a 0.2 stop extra dynamic range. And it makes color grading just tough because you're using 8-bit, whatever. So I think that this could really bump the RP down a notch and really kind of redefine what full frame entry-level mirrorless cameras look like and are capable of. I mean, if 10-bit is true, then that's something the Sony A7 III won't even have, which is $1,000 more expensive than this new camera. Beyond that, the A7 III and even some higher end cameras that Sony makes don't have the new menu system, don't have a flip out touch operable LCD screen. It's just, this is kind of crazy that Sony's putting all these features into this camera potentially. So thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know what your thoughts are on this camera. If you're excited to pick it up, hopefully it's going to be announced in September, so that's coming up pretty soon. I'm eager to see what they bring to the table and how they position this in the entry-level full-frame mirrorless camera market. Make sure to like this video, give it a thumbs up. That really helps out my channel and it means so much to me. Hit the subscribe button if you haven't subbed already. Make sure to turn on post notifications to get my future video uploads, and we will see you in the next video, guys. Peace.